Okay, welcome to our weekly Zero to Pitch Clinic. This is where I answer your startup questions live. The priority goes to our Zero to Pitch group. So if you're not a member, you probably follow my cursor right here. Just scan this QR code. It is free to join for life. Join, get your startup questions answered, and start making progress on your pitch and your pitch deck. If you want to do that, that's how you're going to get going and get moving. That's what you'll get inside of Zero Pitch, all for free. So do that. Just give me a minute to get set up here so that I can make some more progress. If I can, let's see if I can do that. There we go. All right, so there we go. And I can do this. Just give me a second here. Okay, so I can kind of see what's going on. So welcome to both of our audiences, our Zoom audience and our YouTube audience. I'm going to start, as I said, by answering a few questions. So just give me a second to get organized here. Should do it. I hope it should do it. Okay. All right, so we got our questions lined up. If you have questions for me, by the way, you can put them in the chat box in Zoom or YouTube, and I will do my best to answer them. As I said, the Zero to Pitch audience, these are people that are members of our group. They get the priority. So if you're watching on YouTube, this is a great time. So go ahead and scan that QR code, get involved, and it's a great way to start improving and getting and going forward here. So let me start with my first question. All right, first question. This is always a good one. How do I raise money fast? Okay, well, raising money fast is not an easy thing to do. First of all, the average time to raise money is 6 months. That's average. That's the median. It can go faster than that. It can go slower than that. And there are no guarantees that you're going to be able to raise money because the odds are markedly against you. It is hard. It is not easy to do this. So if we want to go fast, what do we need to do? Well, first of all, we have to be prepared from the get-go. So if we're going to go raise money and we think it's going to be easy and we don't have to do much to do it, you will fail. Mark my words. So we have to be able to go fast. We have to be prepared from the start. We have to have a very focused investor list. This would be like step number one for me, a focused investor list. Focused on the specific investors that we want to target, understanding that not all investors are created equal. So there are three things. There are three things that we need, to make this go. And let me go explain, what they are so that everybody kind of understands them, what these three things are. So thing number one is we need to focus on investors that are interested in what we're doing because not all investors are created equal. That's thing number one. Thing number two is we need to focus on investors that invest in our stage, the stage of company that we're in. That's the second thing. And thing number three, oops, sorry about that. Go back, there we go. And thing number three is we need investors that will invest in our geography. In other words, if we're located, I'm just going to make up a city because it popped into my head. And I was talking to somebody from there this morning, from Miami, for example. Then they have to, if we're in Miami, then they've got to invest in Miami. So we have to have that combination of three things: interested in what you're doing, focused on your stage of investment with the right amount of money, And number three, we'll be interested in investing geographically in where you are. So that's like step number one in this process, is we have to get that piece right. Step number two is we have to be prepared, which means we have to have our pitch and our pitch deck ready to go from day one. So we got to work hard on that. We have to get it ready. We have to be able to understand how to make an impact really quickly with investors. So if you're on this call today, if you're in today's clinic, then there's a reasonable chance you might need some help. If you're not already part of the Zero to Pitch group, scan the QR code and then you can join for free. Literally, you could be in there today starting to get better at this stuff. In the classroom section, if you're already a member of Zero to Pitch and you're interested, how do I get better? And you want to start, at least get to a draft level. In the classroom section of Zero to Pitch, there are free courses, including a course called Zero to Pitch Lite. It will help get your pitch to what I would call a draft level. If you want to get to a full-on investor-ready pitch, then you would join Zero to Pitch Gold, which is the paid group. And you would be able to work with me, get even more course material, and get it to that next level. So those are kind of our steps. But really, the key is preparation. If we want to go fast, we've got to be prepared from day one, because we don't know which meeting is going to work out. It's about 100 to 1 are the odds of any investor investing in you. So we've got to be prepared. We have to do a lot of practice, repetition, have our team together, all these various things to be able to make this go. Okay, so that is the answer to our first question of the day. Okay, a lot of these questions are related. So the second question we have from our Zero to Pitch group today, and by the way, if they're if you're watching on YouTube or Zoom, doesn't matter. If you're part of the Zoom group, which means you're part of our Zero to Pitch group, you can put your questions in the chat box and I will be happy to answer them. You guys get priority. We're going to be going for about 30 minutes today, so we'll end at roughly 30 minutes past the hour. The second question we have today is, how do you build credibility with investors? Okay, great question. They don't know you, you don't know them. And they're going to write a large check if you're successful in what you're doing. And part of why they will write a large check is if they deem you to be credible. So how do we do this? Because this doesn't sound easy, does it? And it's not. So what are the tricks to doing this? Well, let's go through a list, and this is in no order. The first thing that pops into my head is it would be great if you had a track record of success, because that builds credibility. If you've already made money for people, that makes it easier. My guess is most of us on today's call haven't. But if we have, great. If we've had success in our previous job, great. All these things help build credibility. What else builds credibility? Being transparent, being honest, having integrity. These are critical things. Being a crisp and clear communicator. Communication is kind of like your secret weapon when you're raising money. If you are crisp and clear and to the point, when you meet investors, it makes it infinitely easier for investors to work with you. So I'm all in on improve our communication. That's going to help with your credibility. Execution is going to help with your credibility. What do I mean by execution? Well, if we're raising money in today's world, and it depends upon who we're raising money from, but in today's world, it isn't so easy where you can just have a slide deck and raise money and say, here's what we're going to do, go write me a check. That's not the way it works in today's world. In today's world, there needs to be some progress. So that goes to execution. The more of your plan you execute, the less risk there is for investors, and the more credibility you have that you're going to actually be able to do what you said you're going to be able to do. So when we think about this, execution can come in many different forms. It can be from building your initial product. It can be from starting to recruit a team. You get the idea. So all of these things help with our credibility. The more we show that we're credible, the more we show we can execute, the more we show that we're trustworthy, the easier it is and the crisper we are in our communication, the more likely it is that somebody's going to feel like you're a good risk and write a check. So that's our second one for today. Again, if you have questions for me and you're watching on Zoom, which means you're part of my YouTube community already, not my YouTube community, you're part of my Zero to Pitch community already, just put your questions in the chat box. You can also put them in the Q&A box, which I believe somebody did. There we go. Oh, my friend Gary. All right. So I'm going to answer Gary's question next. Gary asks, before going out for funding, how do I attract a co-founder, such as someone from marketing, when I am self-funding and can't pay for them right now? Okay, well, if they're a co-founder, almost by definition, it's a good question. There are two pieces to this. The first piece is I'm going to talk about the money piece, because obviously, if you are unfunded at this point and you can't afford people, then you're going to pay in what's called sweat equity in all likelihood, which means you're going to give them equity. And the bet is on their part that getting co-founder equity, which is significantly more than post-founding equity, is going to be worth it for them. And that's why they would want to join you, is because from a financial perspective, it's going to outweigh any salary that you can pay them. So that's on the money side of things. So it doesn't mean giving them 1 or 2%. It means probably giving them a significantly larger percentage of what you're doing. That's that piece of it. The other piece of this, to quote the CEO that I worked with years ago, who's passed away, his name was Jack Gifford. As Jack Gifford once eloquently said to somebody in a meeting that I was in, when this person was complaining that it was hard to recruit people, he looked at him and he said, well, you have to sell your ass off. And that's the other side of this, is we have to sell our vision and our idea to everybody. It's not just investors we're pitching. It's our potential employees, it's our potential co-founders, it's vendors, it's customers. You got to sell everybody on what you're doing. So that's the other side of this, is we have to show people, hey, we're working on something really cool and exciting, and you want to be a part of it, and you want to get in on the ground floor. Whatever your message is, it has to be compelling for people. And this is part of the test. As I was saying in the first question that I answered today, which was kind of like risk reduction. Why are they going to write a check? Well, if you can't recruit a team, let's take the negative side of this, then that's a tell that an investor shouldn't invest. However, if you can recruit a team, that's pretty darn good. And that gets investors excited, right? Because now they're saying, okay, great, the person can recruit. That's a big risk. So that's really important to be able to show people. So that's the other side of this. Okay. So that's the other thing that we want to be able to do. So I hope that answers your question. If you have more questions, put them in the Q&A box or the chat box. And let me go to my next question. All right. How much is a company with $10 million in ARR worth? So ARR meaning annual run rate. So how much is a company worth? In other words, because if we're doing $10 million a year, what's our company worth? Okay, this is a great question, because the reality is that your revenue, you would think, oh, it's all tied to revenue and my net income and my EBITDA or whatever. And none of that really matters, surprisingly. What your company is going to be worth is much more related to the potential of the company than it is your current revenue. So a company that's doing $10 million in ARR could be worth anywhere from essentially nothing literally nothing, to billions. And a company with zero revenue could be worth nothing to billions. It's all about the potential of the company. And then if we add in the other side of this is, okay, what's the reality is it's a lot of it's going to be determined by how much money you're raising. So there's some, and these are some typical rules just to give you a flavor. So let's say the $10 million a year company is going to go raise a round of $20 million. Well, if I'm going to raise $20 million in today's world, I'm probably going to give up 20 to 30% of my company. So let's just go with the 20%. So if I give up 20% for 20 million, that means post-funding, there's what's called pre-funding and post-funding. Post-funding, that means that the investors are going to own 20% of your company roughly after the funding closes. So if they own 20% and they've just raised $20 million, it's very simple math. That means the company is going to be worth $100 million post-funding, $20 million of it in cash. Now, if you raised $10 million, then, and it's probably still going to be 20% of the company you give up, it's going to be 50 million is what your company is going to be worth. You get the idea. That's how these things are determined. That's the way that this is always determined. So it's more about how much money you're raising is going to determine the value. Now, unless somebody comes and makes a bid for your company and buys you, and then there's a kind of like a game of arbitrage that gets played. And the buyer, for example, if a very large company, and I think, for example, I think this happened with WhatsApp. I can't remember the exact numbers on WhatsApp when Facebook bought WhatsApp, but it was like a 15, 20 person company. And they bought them for well over $1 billion, if I remember right. And the company essentially had no revenue. And it's like, you could only be so lucky. Now, why did they do it? Well, because for them, with their market cap, it was a rounding error for them. They could afford to overpay. And there was probably some sort of bidding war going on for the company. That's how you get an extreme valuation. So I hope that helps answer the question. Are you recording for viewing later? Yes, it is being recorded. It will be on my YouTube channel, and I will attempt to post it, and I will send a replay notice on this so everybody can get a link to the replay as well. So yes, it is being posted. Okay. Next question that we have. All right. There are a lot of companies promoting themselves for helping raise funds for a fee. I have talked with some that pre-revenue funding is available, yet I believe it is easier to raise money after you've been able to attract a few customers. What are your thoughts on this? Well, I agree with you. It's much, the more you reduce risk, it's always risk versus reward, right? So I think the question's a really good one. So let's ignore the piece about paying people and that piece. I'll get to that second, but let's talk about just the basics of, hey, is it going to be easier for me to raise money if I have revenue versus in customers versus not having customers? It's always going to be easier if you have customers because you've reduced the risk. You've shown that customers will buy your product, even if they're paying you $1 for the product, to come up with an extreme example. It shows customers will open their wallets. So you're always better off. Always. If customers will pay you. Always, always, always. So that's always a better way to go. Ideally, I mean, sometimes we don't have the choice, but if given the choice, if you can have revenue, then you're better off. Always. So now let's get to this concept of paying people a fee. And I would be very, very, very skeptical of working with people for fees. I think it's usually, not always, but I would say usually it's a scam. And especially here in the United States, it's kind of like a double whammy because in the US, the problem is that, especially if we're trying to raise venture funding, VCs don't like it when you use what are called brokers, which is essentially what you're describing for introductions. They don't like it. They think, you know what, you should be able to find us. You should be able to get right or wrong. You should be able to get in touch with us. And we don't want some intermediary who now we're going to give up money to and likely equity as well. So it's frowned upon. It's not usually the right way to go. And most of these people that you work with are just going to scam you and just going to take your money. There are plenty of scams, by the way, that you have to be worried about, both pre and post funding. Maybe I should do a video on those. In fact, let me just write a note down to myself. Video on scams could be an interesting one. So anyways, I'll write a note to myself about that. But anyways, those are my views, and I hope that helps. All right, let's go to our next question. Okay, why is it so slow to find investors? Why can't I find them? Okay, this goes back. I'm going to just answer this one really quickly. This goes back to what I was talking about at the beginning, in that, what would I do if I'm you? And I hear that, and that's such a general question. I don't really know how to answer it specifically because I don't know exactly what's going on in your specific situation. However, where would I start if I'm having trouble finding investors? First, are you targeting the right investors? Like I said, we have this 3-part criterion to finding investors. We need investors that invest in our space, number one. Number two, we need investors that will invest at our stage of company and will write checks at our size of company. That's number two. And number three, we need investors that will invest where we are geographically. We need the intersection of all three of these things. So that would be my step one, is have you done that? And then step two is you have to be really intellectually honest with yourself. Are you ready to raise money? Is your pitch deck really good? Have you reduced the risk enough, as the previous question was asking about, hey, do we have traction? Do we have customers? What does our team look like? There's all sorts of risk reduction. Have we made progress on developing the product? Those are all things that we can do to reduce risk. And we need all these things to come together. It's a tough world out there, and there's a lot of competition. You're not just competing with companies in your space, you're competing with all the potential companies that an investor might invest in. Right or wrong, this is not easy to do. You have to work really hard at this to make this happen. So I hope that answers your question. So let me just take a quick drink of water, and then we'll go to some more questions before we wrap up. And again, if you haven't already, for my YouTube audience, if you haven't already, then join us at Zero to Pitch. It's free. You can start making progress. You can get your draft done of your pitch and start moving forward rather than sitting on the sidelines. This is a way to get moving. Join, just scan that QR code that's on your screen, and you can get moving literally today. All right. Let's go to our next question. We'll answer a question from our YouTube audience. Oh, there's people saying thank you. All right, no worries. I appreciate that. Okay, let's go to our next question. Is it okay to pay to pitch investors? I think I just answered that. So this is the second one on this subject. So there must be a lot of that going on. So since this came up, let's talk a little bit about scams that are out there. So when I think about scams, and let's talk also about the mental state that we're all in when we're starting companies, and I can certainly relate to this. We're very vulnerable. Before we raise money, and even post raising money, you're still vulnerable. But especially pre-raising money, it's a very vulnerable time, and there are people that will come to you with these things that sound too good to be true. Just give me this, and we'll be able to help you and raise money. That is one scam, the one that was spoken about. There's another scam going around, which is fairly similar, which is, hey, join my accelerator group. It's free to join the accelerator group. Oh, but you have to use these tools that we recommend. And all of these tools, from like using CRM software, to other things that they might offer, you have to use these specific tools. And why does the quote unquote accelerator do this? Well, they can get paid an affiliate fee on all these things. And there are thousands of people in this accelerator. And this is a great group, and we'll be able to help you. You can tap into all these great things. Well, what are they after? They want everything paid. That's another scam out there. Then I'll give you a third scam. As you can see, there are a lot of these scams. Third scam, you go find an investor, potential investor, and they say, okay, answer these questions for us about your company as a questionnaire or whatever. You answer the questions. Okay, everything sounds good, right? Then they come back and they say to you, congratulations, our board, our advisory group, our partners have whatever the scam is, have 100% agreed, unanimously agreed to fund your company for X million dollars or whatever. Okay, sounds great, right? What's the scam, Brett? What's going on? Well, the scam is now, and it's pursuant to us. Here's the catchphrase: is pursuant to us, going through our diligence process, and we require a X $1,000 fee upfront. That's the scam. So in other words, there is no money because there's only the promise of money, but we get paid thousands of dollars, and we can just sit there, do nothing, because we say, there's no way we're funding this thing, collect our fee because you've written them the check and there's nothing you can do about it. They'll have you sign whatever contract there is, and you're out the money. That's the scam. That's the scam here. So there are a lot of ways, if you're not careful, that you can lose money from people who are quote unquote trying to help you and really are never going to help you. So there are lots of these scams out there, is my point. That's the key here. So be careful out there. If you work really hard, you can, even if you don't think you have contacts, you can build a network, get contacts, get in touch with investors, regardless of where you are in the world. I have a free training on this inside of my paid group, Zero to Pitch Gold. That's the next step. If you want to look at this as steps, is join Zero to Pitch. And then if you really want to go from just your draft level to, hey, I'm serious and want to get investor ready, there's free training in there that you can follow, and you can get and it will teach you step by step how to build out an investor list and what to do. All right, I'm going to answer one more question, I think. All right. I've been building my company, Brett, I've been building my company entirely solo for a long period of time. As a mechanical engineer, working at a customary safety level, self-funding, bunch of patents that I personally drafted and developed working physical prototypes. If that body of work represents about $3.8 million worth of de facto of de-risked R&D, essentially engineering that future investors don't have to pay for, where should that appear in my pitch deck? How would you suggest to show it? The $3.8 million, if that's what you're asking about, that's an assumed figure. I don't know whether it means anything, to be honest with you. That's the problem. I appreciate what you're trying to do, but that's not going to mean much. If you've invested $3.8 million, then I hope you did that the right way, where you've essentially taken out equity for the 3.8 million. So there are two pieces. This goes to an interesting discussion on founders and how to divide up money that we've invested versus our equity as founders. So let's say you're a solo founder and you start off 100% ownership of your company. And let's say you put in, just to make up a number, you invest $100,000 of your money. Now, what you should have is essentially there should be a percentage of the company you own as an investor because you've invested $100,000, and you own the rest of that as equity as a solo founder. You're still a solo founder, so you put in $100,000. That would be ideally that should be preferred stock. I would say probably 10% of the company you would get for that $100,000, somewhere around there. So you'd own 10% as an investor, 90% as a founder. Then they're different because the preferred stock, you need, by the way, you need an attorney to do all of this. And you'd have that in preferred stock. Now, let's say you invested another $1 million, probably going to be another, say, another 20% of the company. So now it's going to, everything else gets diluted. You're going to own whatever that percentage is going to be, another 20-odd%. You get your founder percentage, your equity gets diluted again. This is because you're an investor, so you're putting in more money. So if you've invested physical cash, great. That's how you would do that. Your attorney should be able to help you, especially if you have an attorney that's been involved in startups before. However, if this is just an assumption that that's what that is, because this is, as you point out, customary salary level, all that type of stuff, that isn't going to be worth a nickel. And I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but that's just the reality. And even from an investor perspective, again, investors, the thing is, to do big deals, to get investors to invest, these are like big deals, like high level sales we're doing. And to be able to make this go, we have to be able to get people to write a check. And the less friction there is in the deal, the easier that it is to be able to raise money. It's true about closing any big deal. So when we start putting impediments in our way, then that can make it more difficult. I think it's great you have all the patents. I think it's great that all this work's been done. Fantastic. That's what I would show. But to show, hey, I've got $3.8 million in the company, I don't know whether that's even true. Because all that matters is, okay, if you've invested money, great. Then that's what should be shown. But if it's just these are assumptions or whatever, then that's not going to be worth anything. I'm just sorry to be the bearer of bad news. Okay. All right. I think that is it for today. We've run out of time, so I want to thank everybody. There will be a replay available both on YouTube and to the Zero to Pitch audience as well. I'll do it again next week as always. And I look forward to seeing everybody there. So anyways, take care, everybody. Thanks a lot. And by the way, if you haven't already, for the YouTube audience, if you haven't already joined Zero to Pitch, scan the QR code, join, hop in, start getting involved, start getting your pitch up to a draft level, and then we can take it up to the full-on level in Zero to Pitch Gold and get you investor ready. All right. Take care, everybody. Bye.